those who said, I shot an arrow in the air, fell to the earth, I know not where. But long years after, still unbroke, I found that arrow in the heart of an oak. I breathed a song into the air. It came to earth, I know not where. Long years after, from beginning to end, I found that song in the heart of a friend. I submit these records with the usual restriction upon these records. They are not to be used for commercial purposes. This, March 3rd, 1935, Bascom Lamar Lunsford, Minstrel of the Appalachians, recording for Columbia University at New York City.
So, I'd like to begin this presentation by thanking the wonderful crew of archivists and student assistants, Harry, Shannon, John, and Jamie. You all have been incredible and professional, and your complete trust in my research has really kept me together these last 2 months. Thank you, Loyal, for your support and coffee dates and endlessly fascinating stories and tales. I'd also like to thank the Berea College Archives and Library for their openness to collaboration, digitization, and their generosity of providing me both the tools to digitize and examine their extensive archives. The archive is truly one of the best I've ever had the joy to study and research in, and thank you all for making it easy for me in terms of technology, hours, and support. I've been endlessly wowed how much the Berea community has taken me in as a scholar and a friend, Yankee transplant I am. I don't think I can really leave until I've tried all the ice cream possibilities at the Marathon gas station on 25, but seeing as there are 24 squared, I think I'm going to be here a long time. I'd also like to thank the Anne Ray Charitable Trust for making it possible for me to be here at Berea College. The fellowship opportunity is truly unique, and I have been pleased to be in Berea. I first became involved with this project through a scene of folk musicians in New York City, a loosely knit group of banjo players, nostalgics, and folk music enthusiasts. I first learned tunes from musicians who played their banjos in dark bars and theaters, who looked forward to folk horizons with an eye to the past. I found a similar group here, minus the bars, and I've enjoyed the amount of music I've heard both inside and outside of the archive. As a student, I worked mostly on Tin Pan Alley tunes, popular music of the turn of the century, tap dancing, and the difficult underpinnings of gender, class, and race in popular culture. My radio show on WBIR, Barnard College Radio, in New York City, which had at its peak 12 listeners, was a mix of these overlapping passions as I switched from old love songs and ballads to the band, to Kenny Wollaston's experimental jazz, to local bands with names like the Dustbusters, Spirit Family Reunion, and the Carolina Chocolate Drops. My senior year, I wrote a paper on Cecil Sharp for Aaron Fox, my professor in a class called The Social Science of Music, and began to bother him about an archive of the Western North Carolina folk singer Bascom Lamar Lunsford, recorded at Columbia University in 1935. I had heard about it at a weekly Brooklyn folk show called Roots and Ruckus, and at the time, I didn't think anything would come of my persistence. When Aaron burned me a copy of the first disc, and I heard Lunsford's voice, so different and so rare, I knew there was something new and exciting within those recordings. I started working on the Bascom Lamar Lunsford archives last August. The archive, recorded over 2 weeks in February and March of 1935, probably, there's another picture of Lunsford, in Hamilton Hall at Columbia University, where I took many an undergraduate class, is one of the great mysteries of mid-century ethnomusicology and one of the most important hidden archives of American folk music. The project seeks, as it says in my introduction, to create a Web 2.0 teaching resource that is free, downloadable, and interactive, structured in its interactivity, works within the ideals of repatriation and archival reclamation, and as a portal to Lunsford's deep significance within Appalachian folk music and its scholarship. So Web 2.0 is defined as the shift from presenting internet content to users as a collection of marked up text to an interactive environment where users have the ability to create content as easily as they consume it. Web 2.0 is often referred to as the read-write web or the living web, And there's a website that gives a really good overview of Web 2.0 at several pages. It's called interactivearchivists.org. The goals of the website are to challenge hegemonic narratives surrounding Appalachia by utilizing web-based archival techniques to comply with the Lunsford family's wishes to appeal to the common person and keep the songs in use rather than as static archival objects. Living in the East Village of Manhattan last summer, I was about as far as I could have possibly been from the rural mountains of Lunsford's imagination. Listening through the archive for the first time, I felt like Lunsford was talking to me, that his rich holler was somehow reaching out, that I was a part of his archive. I'm not the first person to feel this way. In her essay, Notes from the Archive, A Reflection on Listening, former archives assistant Hannah Rose Baker writes, "As I became more and more attached to these recordings, I wondered what exactly drew me into them so strongly. While I enjoyed the songs that Lunsford sang and found his fiddle playing interesting, what attracted me to the recordings was nothing so concrete as ballads or fiddle tunes. In listening to and reflecting on the recordings, I began to form a complex mental portrait of Lunsford. In the end, however, this too proved unsatisfying. The more I felt that I understood Lunsford and attributed certain behaviors and beliefs to him, the guiltier I secretly felt for claiming to know him. How else could I pin down the attraction of these recordings if not through the performer himself? Beginning with the ineffable draw of Lunsford's voice and music, from Grill Marcus's early writing on Molding the Ground, to the obsession of a group of archives assistant with the quirky 1935 archive, to his extensive archives, a written ballad collection of over 3,000 pieces collected all over Appalachia, along with his photos, newspaper clippings, and so on, which were donated to the Mars Hill Archives, to the new film taking shape in Asheville that follows Lunsford's trail through western North Carolina. I'm asking myself the question constantly, what is it about Bascom Lamar Lunsford? So let's begin to answer this unanswerable question. The facts are this. In 1935, Bascom Lamar Lunsford was paid $3,000 by Columbia University's English department under the auspices of a now-defunct trust called the Manners Fund and the directorship of Dorothy Scarborough, English professor, that's her book from 1935, and George Hibbett, a linguist of the English department, to record his famed memory collection of over 300 folk songs, ballads, stories, and musings, done entirely from memory. Lunsford was a musician, lawyer, folklorist, beekeeper, promoter, and most importantly, ballad collector. He first met Scarborough while she was doing field work in western North Carolina in the late 1920s, and they immediately hit it off. He took her to the homes of his favorite musicians, drove her around in his car, and was entirely supportive of her as a ballad collector. He offered his services, put himself at my disposal with true mountain cordiality, she writes. There's honor even among collectors. I should welcome any suggestion from him, but I would not intrude on his time nor his ballads. She also writes, not unkindly, that he has the light of insanity that denotes the folklorist. Lunsford was an affable man who serves as a connector between folk luminaries, academics, and musicians of the early 20th century and also the mid-century, and his Mountain Dance and Folk Festival, which was founded